Wall Street said, how could we get a little bit of money out of this as well? And they said, what if we set up these 401ks for the employers and then we limit what people can invest in, and it's only things that we make a commission on. We only make money on these things. So now the employer doesn't have responsibility anymore. And Wall Street says, not only that, but we're going to limit what you can invest in. That way we make more money. So the employer's winning, Wall Street's winning. Who's the only person that's not winning in that scenario, right?
Yep.
The everyday American.
Welcome to another episode of Wealth Wednesday. I'm your co-host, Nate Crannell, joined today with the other co-host, Mike Neubauer. Today, we are going to be talking about 401ks and IRAs, specifically solo 401ks and self-directed IRAs, just because a lot of people don't know about them. Of all the IRA and 401k accounts sitting out there, only 3 to 5% are solo or self-directed. So we want to use today to be able to show everyone the powers and the things that go with that, and why for some people it could be better. How you doing today, Mike?
I'm doing great, buddy. Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Beautiful,
Man,
beautiful country out here.
I want to say world traveler, but you haven't been down to Guatemala in a bit. You're just a Midwest mountain traveler now.
Yeah, so far.
All right. Well, I want to give the listeners some background on 401k and IRAs, just as a why they came to be. But I really want to use today as an opportunity for you to share your knowledge, me to share my knowledge on self-directed and solo, and why those are going to be impactful for some of our listeners. So 401k plans were created back in 1978 to encourage Americans to save, right? Before that, pensions were a big thing. Their popularity grew really quick. I think by the early 80s, nearly half of U.S. employers were offering 401ks. At that same time, IRAs had been created as well in the mid 70s through the ERISA Act, or ERISA, really for individual retirement accounts as a tax deferred savings tool for people without pensions. So as people were trying to get out of the pension world, the government created IRAs in 74. They created 401ks in 1978. And then from there, pensions just started disappearing, right? These defined plans, really through employers, was the big driver of those, to really force people to save for retirement. They didn't want people to rely so heavily on Social Security, was really the big thing of it. That, in the 70s and 80s, the balance of Social Security was stacked. And their worry was, man, 30, 40 years from now, Social Security could start dwindling, which, surprise, here we are. So they wanted to create a tool that people could save into. And so most of our listeners are going to be familiar with the 401k and IRA plans that you would get through a traditional broker, right? And everything that they offer there. Tell me a little bit about, because this is something that you haven't and that a lot of our investors leverage. Tell me the differences in a solo 401k to a traditional employer 401k.
Yeah, can we add a little piece to what you just said too, real quick first?
Yeah, go for it.
So with that too, you talked about that transition from pensions and so basically defined benefit as a pension to defined contribution would be 401k, and talked about that transition. And really, as most things in our beautiful, wonderful country, we do have a wonderful country, but most things are not set up to be at our benefit. Really, the reason most of that came out was the employers said, this is really becoming a burden for us to continue to pay for people in a pension once they quit working for us. We don't really want
payout.
this. Yeah, we don't want this burden. I don't want to deal with this and pay for this guy. He doesn't work for me anymore. What can we do to switch this and put the responsibility on the person where we don't have this responsibility anymore? So before, somebody said, listen, I'll dedicate my life to your company. You get to be rich. You get to run your company. I'll dedicate my life to you, but you promise to pay me a fair wage. And then once I hit a set age, I get to retire, and you promise to take care of me in retirement. I'm never going to make as much money as you, but I also am giving up my whole life and I don't have that responsibility. And the employer said, that sounds like a great deal. We'll be loaded. We just pay you a fair wage. Everything's great. And then the employer got more greedy and said, what if we could not do that anymore? And we could make them be responsible, and they keep pushing things onto the individual employee piece by piece. So that really, to me, that's super frustrating because, talk to some of these people, like pilots and stuff and these different industries. that were promised one thing, and by the time they got to the age, there's just no money left because of mismanagement of funds. Just like, most of our government just mismanages the funds. Same with Social Security. It's not Social Security didn't have money or couldn't operate. They could run audits and actuarial reports and say, how much money do we need, and make adjustments as needed, but they just mismanage it and then change the rules down the road, which is so unfair. So, but to answer your question, the difference between the employer paid 401k and a self-directed solo 401k, or to be the difference between a regular IRA at a brokerage or a self-directed IRA, per the code of the United States government, you can have either or. It's a 401k, doesn't matter if it's self-directed or not. It falls within the rules. The IRA as well, it does not matter. But to take it one step further of kind of everybody trying to get their hand in the pot, the brokerages started saying, Wall Street, to sum it all up and kind of lump everything together, Wall Street said, how could we get a little bit of money out of this as well? And they said, what if we set up these 401ks for the employers, and then we limit what people can invest in, and it's only things that we make a commission on. We only make money on these things. So now the employer doesn't have responsibility anymore. And Wall Street says, not only that, but we're going to limit what you can invest in. That way we make more money. So the employer's winning, Wall Street's winning. Who's the only person that's not winning in that scenario, right?
Yep.
The everyday American. So that's the setup. That's the system that we have today. And I don't know, I guess for the foreseeable future, there's nothing on the horizon that's going to change that. But that was really the whole change there, was everybody trying to get money and get out of responsibility. And, it all falls down on the everyday American, in the end, because of that. So we're talking, like you said, self-directed 401ks, self-directed IRAs. We are talking about those because that's basically taken, it is what it is, right? We can't go back to pension plans. We're not going to be able to do that. But although our wealth fund, I like to call it our personal pension plan. So I think you could, you could create it, but you're not going to do it within, the typical retirement way. There's ways to do it on your own. But the self-directed and the solo 401k, that takes the 401k and IRAs that are out there in the world, and that gives you the flexibility to invest in things that are actually going to be beneficial, that aren't going to have a million middlemen in the, taking their cut along the way. So by the time you get to retirement, you really don't have what you expected to be there. So this gives you full control to invest in things like rentals, real estate, give out loans that pay a set, interest rate, things like that, all through your 401k, and not through Mass Mutual, Vanguard, Fidelity. It's not tied to their offerings. It's tied to every investment available that's out there.
Yeah, excellent point. And the perspective you gave there, I think, is something that people probably haven't thought of. Like, oh yeah, 401ks are just a thing. And there's people that are in their 50s and 60s now that were working, getting into the workforce when it switched. There was that major shift from pension to the 401k plan. And so they remember that. And at this point in their career, they're thinking, yeah, that's what my employer offers, and I'm going to put money in, and they're going to match a little bit to go along with it. And I think you and I love analogies, right? I think the best analogy I can think of when I think of the differences between an employer 401k or an individual IRA, or the solo 401k or self-directed IRA, is really the offering. Like you said, right? The best analogy I can think of is like the kids menu at a restaurant versus like the adult menu, right? You get that kids menu and there's like 5 items. And that's really what you get in an employer 401k is, they'll say, hey, we use Fidelity or Vanguard, or, pick your poison there. We use this group, and here's what you can invest in. We'll let you get in 2 or 3 asset classes, some stocks, some bonds. Here's a couple mutual funds that maybe we offer. And you get what you get, and take your pick of one of those, versus a self-directed IRA, solo 401k. I mean, you can do private equity, you can do futures, you can do real estate, you can do crypto, even in some of them, private lending, like you mentioned. So I think just if you can picture yourself and how diverse you want to be, and where you are wanting to create some complexity or to be dynamic with your investing, picture yourself sitting at a table at a restaurant with your family. It's like, do I want to look at the kid menu, or do I want to look at the adult menu?
Yeah. I'll give you one. So it's an analogy. Like you said, we love analogies. So I was thinking of my own analogy. So we got 2 back to back. So one of these is going to hit for people. They're going to understand one of them. So my analogy of the 401k, the employer-based 401k, which, kind of ties to that medical field, is like, it's like the HMO insurance plan. It's like, hey, you have insurance, you can go see a doctor, and then you call a doctor like, oh, we don't accept that HMO. Oh, we don't accept your plan. Oh, we don't. And you're like, dude, you're the doctor I want to see. Like, yeah, we don't accept that insurance. And you keep shopping until you find the one guy that accepts your insurance. And it doesn't matter how good or bad they are because you just need the insurance to pay. So that's your
Mhm.
option. You look across, you're in Des Moines, I'm in Chicago. You look across there and there's, 1,000 doctors. And it's like, well, my HMO plan only allows me to see this number of doctors. And then I got to go see this guy first for permission to go see this guy. And that's the same with the employer is like, oh man, I'd love to, invest in real estate. And like, whoa, well, although that's an option for some people, you only have these options. And if you would like to invest in that stock, you have to ask this guy for permission to go and invest in this stock. And I mean, I just think it's such a joke that it limits the potential investment opportunities for people, but also it is just like so blatantly obvious that the limited options are specifically for commissions to be paid to the brokerage. They're not
Mhm.
going to open up options that don't put money in their pocket. So it doesn't matter if it's good or bad for the individual. It just matters if good or bad for the brokerage who won the business with your employer, and you had no say or control over that.
For sure. Let's stick on the train with physicians because that's most of our listeners, right? Think of the physicians that are employers of hospitals and these clinics and these big medical groups, W-2 employees. Do they have an option to go out and open a solo 401k and contribute?
So they do have an option only if they also have a 1099 outside of that. So like your
Okay.
1099 could be as something as simple as being an Uber driver. Not that a doctor is going to be an Uber driver, but just as a crazy analogy of how simple it could be. As long as you have self-employment income, you can invest in a solo 401k. However, you cannot take your wages from, being a W-2 employee and put it in that solo 401k. So you're stuck with what your employer offers, which is why, besides a number of other benefits, we talk about physicians all the time, but that's why there's typically, you're going to be more beneficial to be a 1099 physician than a W-2 physician. Just opens up your opportunities across the board. With the employer side of things, though, although an employer, and it depends how big, and how close you are to the top, employers do have the option to offer multiple 401k providers. They're not stuck with just one, even though many only have one or two options. But if you had enough, in this case, physicians who went to the employer and said, "Hey, we really want this option as a 401k. It's not really costly to you. Please set this up." They could really push that. It's just unlikely that you'll get a group of physicians that are really going to push that or care enough to force that. So that's why we always say it's much easier for a physician to find a 1099 path to income instead of a W-2 to be able to take advantage of some of these things like a solo 401k.
And I found just in working with a lot of physicians lately, many of them do have that, right? They'll have that W-2 role, within a hospital or a healthcare system, but then, maybe every Tuesday, Thursday, or a Monday afternoon, they're off doing 1099 work in a specific specialty that they're good at, right? And so there is, I'm finding that there's a lot of side income, not as significant as maybe what they're getting paid through their W-2, but there is the opportunity there to, if you are putting money into the 401k through your employer that you're W-2'd with, it might be worth just kind of analyzing and saying, is there more opportunity and positive opportunity for me to use my dollars that I'm making at that side gig to invest that way versus sticking with the kids menu or the HMO plan of the 401k that I have with my W-2 employer.
Yeah, so if you had a mix W-2 and 1099, you could run your 401k through the 1099 side and just
Correct.
not contribute to the W-2 side for sure.
Exactly.
Another thing that, a lot of, that we talk to, a lot of these physicians, they start with one hospital, they're W-2, they have 401k that has built up, and now they change employers. Once that change happens, as long as you have self-employment income, you can set up a solo 401k, and then you can roll over that old W-2 employer's 401k balance. You could roll it into your solo 401k at that point. So there's a number of different ways to get to the solo 401k, unless you're like, I've been at this exact same employer as a W-2 for my entire career and I don't want to change it. I have no self-employment income, then yeah, you're kind of stuck with what your employer offers. But that's up to people. At least we want to make sure that people understand the options that are out there. And if they choose to go down that same path with the W-2 and what their employer offers, that's up to, those types of people. But if you want to take advantage of things and really, our focus is always on, actually building true wealth and turning actual income into actual wealth. These are kind of some of these, whatever you want to call them, strategies and tactics that the wealthy use that many high income earners just don't even know exist.
For sure. Let's talk about the differences then in not just what you can invest in, but how much you can invest. I think that's a big thing for people is, hey, we know that there's contribution limits, right? The IRS was not dumb when they set this up to say, hey, we're gonna limit how much you can put into these type of plans because they are tax deferred. If we're talking traditional 401k, these are tax deferred dollars that you're reducing your income tax to contribute to these. So we're not going to let you put in all of your income, right? With a traditional 401k through an employer, in 2024, that contribution limit is $23,000. For solo 401ks, let's talk about those contribution limits because they're a little bit different. So now we're talking to those physicians who do have that 1099 income, are self-employed sitting out there. Contribution limits look a little bit different in 2024. Max right now is $69,000 for 2024. So you're talking a difference 3 times what you can get into a traditional employer 401k in 2024. Talk about the impact and the power that can create.
So the reason that is larger, so those numbers are the same no matter whether you're an employer sponsored one or a solo 401k, but the difference is why that number seems higher on the solo 401k side is because you're operating as both the employee and the employer. So
Bingo.
You get to set what the matches are. You get to decide, hey, if you put $1 in, I'll match, up to this number. Where when you're the W-2, your employer decides that. If the employer says, we match 10% of what you put in, that's all they're going to match. But when you're on the solo 401k side and you're getting 1099 income, you're the employer. So you say, hey, what is most beneficial to my employee? Well, you're also the employee, and you can set up all these decisions to make sure that you hit that max of whatever he said it was for 24, 69,000. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but let's just assume that's accurate. You get to decide, how do I work these numbers to make sure I hit that 69? Where on the other side, what was the employee portion you could put in? Like 24,000, is that what we said? 23,000. So if you're a W-2, you can choose to put in 23,000, but your employer sets the rules on how much they're going to match. So you may never get to hit that 69,000 side of things. The other benefit is when you're the employer, you get that deduction as a write-off for matching your employee, which is also you, matching that employee's contribution up to 69,000. Where on the other side, when your employer matches, they do, but they get the deduction and they get to decide all the rules. So that's really the benefit is, especially for, our high income earners, you're looking to put what you can into a traditional and reduce your taxable income. You really want to be in control then of the numbers. You don't want your employer in control of your retirement numbers. So I just think it's just crazy. Like as we talk through this, I've always been a believer in it. But as we talk through this, just like unbelievable the benefits to the solo 401k versus what your employer offers. So when your employer offers it, they decide what you're allowed to invest in. And if and it's not really your employer, but the brokerage that they contract with, that brokerage decides what you're allowed to invest in. So you're limited. You don't get the choices. And then they decide how much they're going to match. So they decide how much of the, taxable benefit you're going to receive. They're controlling everything. And then they say, here's what's left if you would like to do it. Where on the other side, you control every decision. You can max it all out if you want. You can invest in whatever the world desires. There's just so obviously with, slight limit, you can invest in collectibles and things like that. But, there's just so many more benefits on that side that it's just unbelievable that it's not more popular, whatever you said, 3 to 5%. It's like when you have so many benefits of something and there's not a high use of it, there's really only one explanation is like somebody doesn't want you to know about this. And that would be Wall Street because they're the ones, not getting it. If Wall Street benefited from solo 401ks, you can bet that next year that percentage would not be 3 to 5%. It would be going through the roof because they'd be pushing the marketing on how great this is and everybody should be doing it.
Yeah. Unless not only managing those dollars, but if there was like a big fee to set it up, and say, hey, we'll set it up for you, but we're going to charge you an exorbitant fee to do it, then I could see that coming from mainstream brokers. But like, they're going to limit the assets that you can invest in. They're not going to promote it, because why would they promote something that they can't make money off of? If they can put you into stocks and bonds and mutual funds that they're going to make money off of, why would they promote and say, hey, you could do this yourself? It's not terrible. I think those are the two biggest reasons. It is just not marketed very much, because most people, when they hear IRA or 401k, they instantly think Wall Street, like you said. They think Vanguard, they think Fidelity, they think my financial advisor down the street that helps me. That's just that's their only thought. They also think, man, I don't really have time to do that myself. Like, I don't have the knowledge, I don't have the expertise to go out and do these investments on my own. What would you say to those people with that last part, that think, man, I just don't have the time to really, like, I love the idea, I love the concept of having total control of my investments. I just don't have the time or the expertise to do it.
Yeah, so there's really no downside. So if that's somebody's concern, there's no downside to doing it. Because let's say you're at work, let's say they give you a Vanguard, Fidelity, pick what it is. If you do a solo 401k, you can still access Vanguard and Fidelity individually. So you have all the same opportunity that your employer currently offers you. And if you don't have the time, you set up your solo 401k, you still now get to choose how much you match, from the employer side. So you still get to cash in, put as much as you can into that to reduce your taxable income, where on the employer, if you're with the W-2, you don't have that option. So you gain that benefit, which has nothing to do with your investment knowledge or abilities. And you also can invest it directly into what your employer currently offers. So you don't lose anything by going the solo 401k route. But let's say you don't have time now. Maybe you got young kids, maybe you're just finishing a fellowship, maybe you're swamped at work and trying to take care of all these patients, or whatever the case may be. You don't have time. But you set up that solo 401k where you can push in as much money as you possibly can, and you just run it like you currently do. Well, maybe in 5 years, you do have the time. And now you have all that money in the solo 401k, and you say, you know what, now I do want to learn about this investing thing a little bit more. I do want to kind of see what other options are out there. So it's, even if you don't have the time today to take advantage of rental real estate, private lending through your 401k, things like that, at least take advantage of all the benefits that it offers that don't take up additional time. And one day when you do have the time, now you can take a look and say, is there something I should be doing with this that, I wasn't doing before?
Yeah. And you're also not paying the broker fees, right? People just think, oh, I do a 401k through my employer, I'm not paying a fee. Like, they just manage it. No, there's still fees cooked in there, and you are paying those. So at least investing in the same way that your employer 401k would have done, doing it yourself, you're saving some fees. What I think is the biggest, there's the potential opportunity loss. So let's say you are busy, you have young kids, you just finished up a fellowship, you just set it up how you were for that 5-year time frame you're talking about. Well, during that 5 years, somebody might approach you and say, hey, I have a really good real estate opportunity for you. I need some private lending. Could you help me out? Crowdfunding, hedge funds, all those types of things. These opportunities might come up, and you might be like, man, I have all this money sitting in my 401k, but I can't touch it till I'm 59 and a half. And I really can't invest it with you because, I'm stuck with my employer 401k. Even if you don't have the knowledge or the expertise or even the time right now, if those opportunities come up, if you're in a solo 401k, you at least have the potential to invest, to learn quickly, to have the opportunity to be able to invest in that. Whereas having it in your employer 401k, your money's tied up. It's going to sit there until you're 59 and a half.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is like I said, even if you don't have the time, you just never know when that opportunity is gonna show up. Like, dude, you could have a physician approach you and say, hey, I'm starting my own physicians group. I'm going to start this practice. I just need $100,000 loan. I'm going to pay 20% on it just to get it off the ground. And you're like, oh my God, I love this physician. He's great at what he does. He's going to be so successful. And I could give a 20% loan. Like, this is a no brainer, but you don't have 100 grand sitting cash. You would love to do it from your 401k, but you don't have access to it. Like, you just cannot predict every opportunity that's going to pop up. And if you don't set yourself up to have access to this, you're kind of just stuck, and that, man, it's just crazy what you give up, right? You can't touch the money till 59 and a half. So you either way, whether it's 401k or not, you can't personally touch, or solo 401k or through your employer, you can't personally touch that money till 59 and a half. But you also lose all the ability of where you're going to invest it. Like, you're giving up so many, benefits to that amount of money that you have by tying it up somewhere. You just keep restricting yourself more and more by putting money into that.
For sure. Let's talk about the different investment types that you can put in. We've listed a bunch. Obviously, you and I do real estate. What's the opportunity gain from having a solo 401k and investing in real estate versus sticking with a portfolio that's, some stocks, bonds, and some mutual funds?
Yeah. So the biggest thing from an investment standpoint, why I love real estate and why, I think a solo 401k in real estate is like, dude, I don't know, like the world's best kept secret is because you could take, let's say you got to put 20% down into something. If you had a $200,000 balance in your 401k and you invest that 200,000 and you're trying to make 8% and that 8% compounds and it's like, oh, over time, maybe this will be worth, 400,000. It's going to double in value because I made good, wise investments. Or why real estate is amazing is because you find a solid real estate deal. The property costs $1 million. You can take that $200,000 as a down payment onto that property, acquire $1 million in real estate, and use leverage to now have that investment. So now with your $200,000 investment, you just acquired $1 million asset. In 30 years, in commercial world, it's going to be less, 20 to 25 years. That property is guaranteed to be paid off. And now this $200,000 down that I just bought or that I just invested is guaranteed in 20 to 25 years to be this $1 million asset. It doesn't matter if it returns 6%, 8%, the market goes down, the market goes up. I own $1 million piece of real estate. All I do is pay off the loan. Now it's free and clear. My 401k now owns $1 million of real estate. You can refinance that down the road. You can sell it. You could, get into a bigger property. So you're allowed to use leverage with the solo 401k, which is just, when you're talking about returns and people are like 8 to 10%, you add leverage to it and it is exponential returns that you can do. I bought a property. I know this is going to sound crazy, but I bought a property for $5,000. This is a single family house with my 401k. This property had a medical judgment against it of $100,000. The property was only worth about $100,000. So we bought it for $5,000 and we knew that this 100,000 was there. So it was a $5,000, risk on the purchase, but I had a good feeling that this medical judgment was going to settle. I knew that they knew they weren't going to get paid. They were never going to get this 100,000. The lady was going to file bankruptcy before they ever got paid. I also knew that like the medical judgment collection company doesn't want to foreclose and take over a house because this house needed repairs. It's just not going to happen. So we got this for $5,000. We ended up settling the medical judgment and then sold the house. So my $5,000 investment my 401k went from $5,000 to $80,000. Dude, you tell me what returns you can get. Do whatever you want. You're never going to match, whatever that is. What is that, like 90x or something?
Yeah,
You're just never going to match those returns. And same thing, I wasn't like looking for this property. It just happened to be that the right place at the right time. This lady said, if I could just get $5,000, then that could get me out of the home into this new rental. I really just want to get out of here. And I can't sell it because I have this medical judgment. So it won't sell free and clear. Nobody will buy it with the medical lien. I can't afford to pay off the medical lien. It was just happened to be in the right place at the right time. And 5,000 turned into 80,000 just because I had that 5,000 sitting in a 401k, wrote a check, bought the house, and that was it, So those opportunities exist that, people would think, dude, if anybody listening, send me an email, text message, whatever. I'll walk you through the deal, show you closing statements, show you my balance. I'll show you everything of how this deal worked. And I think people just don't realize these opportunities exist out there. And they say like the rich just keep getting richer. And it's like, yeah, but not by chance, by just having more knowledge in the financial world and knowing how to take advantage of these things that everybody has access to. The rich just know how to use them, and the middle class and the poor just don't know how to use them. If they did, they would just enter the rich world as well, and they'd keep getting richer.
Absolutely. Such a unique opportunity that probably doesn't come up even for a lot of real estate investors. They might hear this and be like, man, that guy nailed it.
Yeah.
That was really good.
But sometimes you just get lucky,
For sure. So that's a good segue. We were talking offline about just some frustration that you have in people's mindset around building wealth. They just feel like, oh, I'm maxing out my 401k. The amount of times I've heard that in my life, like, oh yeah, I'm maxing out my 401k. I'm going to be fine for retirement. we've talked on other episodes of Wealth Wednesday about our belief in retirement and how it's a fallacy, right? It's kind of, it should be a myth, right? But talk about your frustrations in that people thinking the investment tools that they have, or that what their advisor can offer them, that's not going to build true wealth, and that there are opportunities out there, notwithstanding the one that you just mentioned, the opportunities that you have if you have full control of your investments, the amount of wealth and the speed of the wealth that you can build in all these other different opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, so the most frustrating thing is like the Wall Street, the brokerages, unless you are just so good at analyzing companies and finding, that diamond in the rough, which nowadays is just so tough because technology and these big companies have access to find the deals long before any of us could find them. And by that time, a deal, it's already ran up its 100%. You miss that opportunity, so just super tough. And they just get you to that 8 to 10%, which I'm sure some marketer a long time ago figured out that people are happy at 8 to 10%. They feel like that's enough. And they just kind of set that, and the market always returns about that 8 to 10%. Could you probably hit 12, 15, 20? You definitely could. But these brokerages and these fees, there's the competition there. They always are finding ways to bring you back down to 8 to 10%. They're going to find a way to add a new fee. They're going to have a new annual fee to run the account. They're going to have a new, asset management fee, a new trading fee. There's always something that just keeps eating away. And somehow, like magic, it ends up at that 8 to 10% over and over. And people are happy with that, which is why it's so frustrating, is because that 8 to 10% is just enough to keep you happy and feel like you're making progress. You see that account grow and you're like, oh, I'm doing something. But inflation is eating that away. That 8 to 10% is typically not going to be after inflation. That's pre-inflation. So that 8 to 10% growth, when you turn $100,000 into $1 million, most of that is just capital contribution. Most of that is just actually your money that you put into that pot year after year after year that turned 100,000 into $1 million. That growth where that wasn't your capital, is just the gains on your money. Most of that gain is eaten up by inflation. So if you took that gain and said, I made 8 to 10%, this is great, now I'm going to go buy a house. Well, the houses also went up 5% every year, so it's not like you really made that much. You just kept putting it away. You might as well just like put it in a safe in the, if the government said, hey, if you put $24,000 or $23,000 said into a safe in your house and you just locked it up there, we'll let you deduct that against your taxes. Like, it's not much different. There's no risk in that. That the inflation is going to eat it away, but you also know it's not going to go down, in nominal value. So, I mean, it's just frustrating because it's just enough. It's like I feel like it's such a marketing thing to make people feel like they're doing great for themselves. And it's just a setup, because those brokers are sure making a good living. They're sure making a ton of money, and you just see your graph kind of slowly grow. And this dude's driving around in a Maserati and a yacht on the weekends. It's super frustrating. I am super excited to introduce to you the Doctors and Dollars 5-Day Financial Challenge. I'm Mike Neubauer. I'm CEO of Grand Vision Companies, and I'm the one that you see on the Wealth Wednesday and Daily Dollar episodes with Nate. So Nate and I are partnering again to do something even more exciting, which is the 5-Day Challenge. We're taking the best of all of our episodes, all of our expertise and knowledge, and we're condensing it into an impactful and purposeful 5-day presentation, 1 hour per day, for 5 days, to give you everything you need to build that foundation for your financial future. So if you're looking to gain the pieces, you want those puzzle pieces and find out how they fit in your financial plan, head over to the Doctors and Dollars website, join us on the 5-day challenge. We're putting it together for free, so you got nothing to lose. We look forward to seeing you on the inside.
I mean, you talked about capital contribution being the majority of that growth of an account, going from 100,000 to $1 million. Now let's think about once someone does retire. Let's Dr. Smith, our fictionary doctor. Dr. Smith retires. He's got $1 million in his account. It's not like the economy says, hey, everyone, Dr. Smith just retired. Inflation, we need to stop. So now you're not contributing. There's no capital contributions to grow that account. Now you're just making withdrawals in retirement, and inflation still exists. Like, it's still happening. Yeah. You could have a 2008 happen when you retire. You could have a global pandemic happen in your retirement, which is just going to eat up your account even faster. And people don't don't think about that. They're okay. And I don't really think that $1 million in a 401k anymore is like, 20, 30 years ago, if you said, oh, if I get to $1 million, I'm set. Like, I'm going to be good for retirement. I don't think that's the case anymore. There's just been so many statistics and studies done out there that says like $1 million just isn't going to cut it. That's not going to last you very long, just based on cost of living and things like that. But I still think people just undervalue all of the other factors that come in when they are growing their money, that it's like 8 to 10% is okay. Like, I'm sure I haven't been in these conversations, but like, you go to a country club and all these, wealthy people are golfing together and like, oh yeah, my wealth grew by this much. And I was getting 9% last year. And this guy's like, oh, I only got 6. What did you do to get 9? It's like, what if you could be the guy that rolls in and be like, yeah, I had 27% last year.
Yeah.
You're like, what?
I know,
What
like
the heck?
I should have been at 40, but I only ended at 27.
Yeah. But I think that you made an excellent point in that, like, there's got to be some psychological thing that people figured out that's like
Yeah,
8 to 10% is just
yeah.
that. Yeah. You got 10% last year. Man, the market did pretty good. We got 10. Last year was 3. It's like there's just the potential out there to get 20, 30, 40%. And people, I mean, to see an account, like you said, your 401k, your solo 401k went a $5,000, loan went out, 80,000 rolls back in, within, what was that? Maybe 3 months?
Yeah. I think it was about a year. Yeah.
Was it about a year?
So, but we also rented the property out in that meantime. So there was also some gain from, cash flow coming in on the rental side. I mean, there's all different things, just to simplify the story to make it easier. But yeah, there's additional, sources of income, monthly income. So like in that scenario, for 5,000, we acquired this piece of real estate. Now we rent it out, and the cash flow from that rental, like that guy living there's like contributing to my 401k on my behalf by renting that property out. Like if I was with an employer, I can't call some stranger and be like, hey dude, would you put $1,000 a month into my 401k for me? That'd really be nice. But in that scenario, I own a house now. I chose to invest my 401k into owning a property. And now this guy pays rent every month and literally deposits $1,000 into my 401k every month on my behalf as an investment. It's just crazy. Talking about this stuff, like the most frustrating thing for me is most people, I'm super fortunate, you're super fortunate to learn this stuff at a young age. Our kids are going to grow up not knowing a difference. It's super frustrating because a lot of people many will never learn about, for instance, a solo 401k or self-directed IRA. But many people don't realize any of this stuff until it's too late. They get to age 55, they start thinking about retirement. And they're like, yeah, maybe at 60. Not quite there, 63, 65, like, oh man, like this is going to be tight. Like, man, life expectancy, like the medical professionals are keeping us alive longer. Like now I got to live to 95, 100. I thought I'd die by, like, now it's getting tight and now there's no room left, right? There's no time to say like, let's go and start this over and not do the traditional way. Let's make sure our retirement is set. It's like, well, now you're 60, 65. You don't have those big chunks of time to make some of those big plays. Now, like you don't have the time and your mindset is conservative because you can't take any risk anymore. You have to play it super safe because now growth is even less, valuable because a loss would be crushing at this point,
For
so
sure.
That's the other frustrating thing is not only do people not learn about it, by the time they do, typically it's just, they waited so long to execute on something that they missed a huge opportunity of time.
Yeah. And good point with the longevity. I mean, that's one of the biggest risks of retirement is outliving your money, right? Back in, let's say, the 40s, 50s, 60s, when pensions were huge, when they did create, then in the late 70s, they created the 401k. Part of the reason why the 59.5 rule is there, they're like, well, most people were retiring and pensions were kicking in at 60, and they're really only going to live to like 75 anyway. So we only have to really pay out this pension, for about 15 years. 401k comes about, they're like, we need to set a limit on when people can touch this money so that we guarantee that they're saving for retirement. Still with the mindset of like, let's pick 59.5 because they're only going to live to 75. Well, now people are living to 85, 90 years old, no problem. And people still want to be able to go out and have a lively retirement. So people are still retiring around 60 or 65, but they're just living longer. And so that value, the true value is not, the true value is diversifying and having different income sources in retirement or at that stage of life. I don't want to call it retirement. At that stage of life, you want to have different income sources coming in, but you just don't want to outlive them, right? You want something that's guaranteed, that's going to keep coming in, regardless. You don't have to worry about market trends and waking up and watching CNBC in the morning when you're having coffee, being like, oh gosh, darn it, surely this is the day when the market's crashing and my 30 years of work at the power plant is going up in flames.
Yeah. 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 I mean, this is when I was excited to do this topic with you, because I just know that this is just such a powerful tool for wealth building, because I'm not always a huge fan of retirement plans because it restricts you. You can't touch the money till 59 and a half. There's a lot of restrictions. But for the high income earners, there's a lot of value to be able to put money into a 401k to reduce your taxable income. So it's like, okay, well, let's take advantage of that opportunity, but with trying to not put all these restrictions on ourselves. And that's why it's such a powerful tool, is because this gives you kind of the best of both worlds. You don't put all those restrictions besides 59 and a half, but you get advantage of not having to pay taxes on that, income, or deducting it from your, income tax. So I don't know, what else did we miss on? What else did we not cover on the topic?
I mean, I was going to land next on exactly what you said. You kind of read my mind there. Is like the biggest advantage for a solo 401k for a 1099 physician today is the tax advantage, right? It's the ability to deduct that income tax today. The kind of next layer on that, which I think is super powerful, and what I talk to physicians about all the time when they're like, what should I do with my money? I have I have these 2 or 3 401ks from old hospitals sitting out here. What do you think I should do with them? My first thought is solo 401k, not for the reason of tax deferral today, which is big, but for you can be getting tax deferred dollars going in on your income, but you can then invest in real estate, which then you can create passive income from a tax standpoint down the road. So you're kind of avoiding Uncle Sam. It's kind of like playing hide and seek, right? You're kind of hiding behind the tree, the legal way, right? We're not hiding anything illegally, but to get dollars in, defer that taxes, and then, with the opportunity to have passive income down the road, it's big.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, nothing's illegal about it, because I guarantee you the one group of people taking advantage of this is the politicians. They don't miss a beat. They know, I mean, whatever Congress makes $150,000, $200,000 a year, whatever it is, they're
But
way
they're all
wealthier.
multimillionaires.
Yeah. Like, they're not living on a peasant's, they're investing that in a way that they understand and they know, and most people don't know about it. Oh, I was going to say the other thing, just like I said in my example, granted, turning 5,000 into 80, like I said, it's not like that opportunity comes day after day, like, oh man, another 5,000 to 80, but those opportunities do come. But that is why I love that real estate. Like I said, that guy's paying rent. So somebody is contributing to your IRA month after month. Every time that dude goes to the bank, deposits that rent check, that is a deposit into your 401k. We invest, some of our investors, with us, have their IRAs and 401ks invested through the wealth fund. We just bought 160 units in Cedar Rapids. Every one of those 160 tenants, they walk in, they do it all online pay, but they pay their online payment. It hits the bank account. That online payment is literally a contribution to those investors' 401k. They didn't have to add any more money. They didn't have to do anything. That tenant worked hard, earned income in the real world, and said, I need a place to live. We give him a place to live. He pays his rent. That money hits the 401k month after month. Like, imagine now you take your 401k, you contribute to it, right, to reduce your taxable income. You invest it in real estate. Let's say you buy a fourplex, just as a super simple example. You buy a fourplex on your own, and now you have 4 tenants. So you are contributing every month, and you have 4 other people every month adding money to your account. Let's take it to the next level. You take your 401k, you invest with somebody like us that we bought the 160 units. So now every month you contribute to your 401k, and 160 other humans take their money and add it to your 401k. Well, I mean, it's pretty simple math. If you start looking at, if I invest in real estate, so if next year I bought another 160 unit, and the following year I bought another 160 unit, it doesn't take very long before 1,000 human beings are all placing their money into your 401k account month after month. But people just don't look at it like that. They look at the typical Vanguard, Target fund, or S&P 500 fund, or I try to do Apple stock because it went up 8%. Like, Dude,
Hmm.
unless every Apple employee is taking their hard-earned money and depositing it directly into my 401k account,
Hmm.
I don't really have any interest in rolling the dice of what Apple's going to do next year or what the S&P 500 is going to do. I want human beings taking money and placing it into my account, and we provide them shelter and a great place to live in exchange for that. But like, I want specific, very easy to understand ways of how does my account grow? Well, 160 humans all put money into my account last month. That makes sense how that grows, you know?
That's a great, not even an analogy. I was going to say that's a great analogy, but that would be the wrong word. That's not an, that's truly is what it is.
Dude.
That's
And
awesome.
I mean, so I take it one step further because this stuff just fires me up. I just love this. It's
Get
like
fired up.
diversity. You know, people talk about diversity and they're like, well, you want to diversify in your stocks. Dude, 160 people are all putting money into my 401k. And guess what? All 160 of those humans work for different employers, different companies, different corporations. Some are nurses, some work for the government, some work for a factory, some are pilots, some are whatever. Dude,
Hmm.
there is no more diversifying your investment than having 160 people who all pay your account work in different industries across the United States. You know, I mean, you're getting healthcare, technology, hospitality, you're getting every type of industry renting from you. So you're
Hmm.
totally diversified. And then they're directly taking money and placing it into your account. I mean, it's just like, to me, it's like a no, I don't know. It's a no-brainer. I would love if somebody
Yeah.
could change my mind, find a way, because I can't find like any faults. I just can't find any ways that it doesn't work. And I think that's obviously, like I said, why, you know, the rich people do it and the politicians, because it is kind of foolproof, you know.
Yeah.
Granted, I guess one downside is, you know, you could take your 401k and your uncle who's never been good with money says, I want to get into this business. Could I borrow $100,000? And you don't have the discipline to say, like, dude, you're not good with money. You have no proven track record, but I'm going to give you $100,000, and he blows it and you don't get
Yeah.
paid back. I guess that's the con, is like, if you emotionally, you know, give in easily, or you're going to be tempted to make bad decisions with your money. But, you know, as long as you make wise decisions and you're disciplined, there's really just no downside.
Yeah. To piggyback on that, there's kind of that sub layer of diversification is, and again, I'm talking within Grand Vision Wealth Fund of like, we own properties in Iowa, you know, all over the Midwest. That's one level, but then think of, like you said, all the tenants that live within those properties. Think of the economic impact of a global pandemic, right? You know, some of those 160 tenants that are here in Iowa might have been waitresses. Pandemic happens, now they can no longer work, and it makes it hard for them to pay rent. But some of them might have been nurses, to where they're working even more, and so you have that a market fluctuation with a traditional 401k. You know, the whole account just goes down, right? We had people during the pandemic that, you know, their accounts went down 25-30%, and that's just because everything was in stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, whatever, versus the impact of that those people have. The nurses, for example, are working way more, and they're still contributing to the economy. Is what I'm trying to say, is they're able to,
Yeah.
there's the diversification within the workers, there's the diversification within the region. There isn't just a large, hey, Wall Street is failing right now, everybody's account is down. It's like, no, when you can diversify and you can be in real estate, Midwest real estate is doing okay. Yeah, California kind of sucks right now, but you know, we're all in the
Yeah.
Midwest, and that allows us to stay strong.
Yeah, you know, most people just do their basics. They just do stock and bonds. You know, I try to hedge my stocks with my bonds. I try to hedge my bonds with my stocks, and hopefully, if one goes up, the other goes, or hopefully, when one goes down, the other goes up. And overall, and of course, like I said, it always works out to that 8 to 10%. But there's just so many more ways to hedge your bets, and that's what you're, you know, alluding to right there. Is
Mm-hmm.
okay, nobody saw a global pandemic coming, but by the fact of diversifying who's paying you rents, you have just hedged the bets that when the hospitality industry tanks, when restaurants tank, well, healthcare went through the roof, you know, so you're
Mm-hmm.
always hedging your bets by, you know, by default, because of the diversification of your tenant pool and geographically, you know, of where your properties are located.
For sure. So we've been singing praises, right, of solo 401ks and self-directed IRAs here for the last, you know, let's call it 50 minutes. Is there downfalls? So kind of a two-part question. Is there downfalls of, or I guess cons, you could call them, if we're going to make a pros and cons list? Is there any cons to the solo 401k and self-directed IRA compared to, you know, the
Yeah.
alternative?
So the cons, Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. What's the second?
And then part two would be again to talk about Grand Vision Wealth Fund, right? How can investing in multifamily supersede or overcome a few of those cons when using a self-directed IRA or solo 401k, being a private equity fund?
So the cons, I think are going to be the cons no matter what. Any investing, the con is kind of going to be the same. I think in the solo 401k, you just have a little bit more freedom to make bad decisions, So
Mm-hmm.
like if your, drunk uncle comes and says, "Hey, could I borrow 100 grand?" and it's tied up with Fidelity and your employer, you have to say no because you have no way to access that money and give it to him. So you're gonna say no. Where if it's in the solo 401k, you can make bad decisions, So I guess that's the con is you have a little bit more freedom to make bad decisions. I think really the cons of 401k of any investing is that you just choose the wrong investment, right? You pick a
Mm-hmm.
company that, you're sitting around the lunch table and people are like, dude, I heard this company is about to blow, they're going to be awesome. Deep down you have no way to analyze a company. You don't know how to read financial reports and you just go off emotion because so and so said and you jump on the bandwagon and it goes crashing and you lose money. So whether that's a solo 401k or whether that's at your employer, if you make decisions based on emotion, you're always going to have those cons. And those cons are kind of just standard with investing. Um, so I think you just have to vet, I think that's the biggest thing is vet the players. And a lot of times, and that's what I don't like about the employer sponsor side is you don't have an opportunity to vet. You're going to be really emotionally charged because like, let's say you're investing in Tesla stock. Well, I mean, how are you really going to vet Tesla stock? Like you're not calling Elon Musk to meet with him to see, is this guy crazy or is he, a genius?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is he really going to return a ton of money through Tesla and space? Like you just don't know how to vet those side. And on the employer side, it's just too big to be able to do any real vetting. So what a lot of people do is they stick to a basic target fund or a basic S&P 500. And they basically say, because I have no clue how to vet, I'm just betting on the stock market as a whole. And
Set it
hopefully
and
it
forget it.
continues to do what it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
On the solo 401k side, you have the ability to really vet, so you could be, like I said, if you're a physician, you could have a physician buddy that says, hey, dude, I just got partnered with this guy who's opening a physician's group. And you have the opportunity to truly meet, with that person and say, okay, does this guy seem legit? What kind of, let's see his tax returns, or let's see what other physician groups he started before and how they're performing. You have the ability to really get deep in there and vet it and then see what kind of returns you can expect. Same. So second part of your question with us, the Grand Vision Wealth Fund. I mean, dude, we're as transparent as can be. You're welcome to take a look at whatever you want. But that's the opportunity, same thing, to really dive deep and say, like, are these people, is this team, are these managers legit? Are they going to be actually able to do this? You actually get to talk to these small companies like us versus Tesla. You're not talking to Elon Musk. So you get to really, truly one-on-one get a feel for, is this going to work or not? And just do that vetting. And I think with that vetting, so all these deals are almost always private equity. There's a real reason private equity is going through the roof right now because public equities, stocks and bonds, public equities, and just to clarify, public equities would be more the stock side, the bonds would be their own, but you get what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? That
Yep.
typical Vanguard, they're always going to return low because you don't have that risk of having to vet. On the solo 401k side, the returns are going to be much greater, but the risk comes from if you get lazy and choose not to vet. You just take, the guy at the kitchen table says, I invested, with this company doing a multifamily deal, and you just blindly put money there and it doesn't work out. So then you're going to say, well, the risk is much higher, but it's just really the vet. So the potential is much higher as long as you just put a little bit of effort into just talking to people and just getting a general feel like, is this dude legit or not? I mean, to do some Facebook research. I don't know, like
Sure.
just get a general feel on the person that is going to be running this business. Like Elon Musk, Tim Cook at Apple, the general feel you get from those people is all very biased based on blue and red politics. It's all very biased because Apple and Tesla have a huge marketing engine behind them that are pushing an image of this person that they want you to see. So you're not getting a true feeling of the human being behind guiding the ship. You're
Mm-hmm.
getting what they want you to see of this person. So I think that's some of the risk is just if you don't put forth any effort, you just take somebody's word for it and roll the dice and hope that things, work out, or if you give it to your family. But I think the huge opportunity is that you get to be kind of an integral part. You really get to be on the inside with your investment. You really get to see behind the scenes of, man, how does this thing operate? What kind of returns are we going to expect,
For sure. All good points. Let's talk about, because we do real estate, I want to kind of lean in on that just because people are going to be listening to this. They know what you and I do. There's going to be some curiosity. Maybe they want to vet us. They're like, hey, I'm going to get these two on a call just to see if these guys are legit. As you think about real estate, we have several investors that leverage a self-directed IRA to invest with us. They have previously invested into real estate before joining our fund. What are some of the risks, or I guess it could be considered a con, of investing in a self-directed IRA on your own? Investing into a self-directed IRA on your own, investing into real estate with that IRA on your own, versus using those IRA dollars to invest with a private equity fund. I think you know where I'm going with this as far as like self-dealing and things like that. But talk through the risks of, if somebody's listening to this and saying, okay, I can invest in real estate, I'm going to move my money over. I've been wanting to buy some single family properties. I've been wanting to buy that fourplex, that was down the street. Mike and Nate just said, hey, I can do real estate within a self-directed IRA. I'm going to go do that on my own. What are some of the risks there?
Yeah. So, there's always, like I said, I always think the self-directed solo 401k is going to be the better option compared to the employer-based 401k. The downside, which is totally unrelated to 401k or retirement investing, first and foremost, the downside of all the high income earners we talk to, whether you're an attorney, doctor, you own a business, the downside is that you are more profitable taking your hours into your specialty that you get paid very well to do. You're never going to invest in real estate and match $300-400 an hour as your first investment. It's going to take 8 to 10 years of learning the ropes before you're starting to return that kind of, dollar per hour return. So it never really makes sense. Like I said, if you're making $30, $40, $50 an hour, it makes sense to go down that real estate on your own, to really put in the time and effort, because you have the ability to very quickly get past that $50 an hour limit that you currently have as an employee. If you're making $300-400 an hour, it's going to be tough to match that, and it's really going to be detrimental to your financial position to try to go do it on your own. So that's first and foremost. The downside, so yeah, let's talk. I guess there's some cons, right? If you put your money in the employer 401k, you really can't screw it up. There's no way to invest in the wrong thing. The downside of the solo 401k is self-dealing, stuff like that. So what you can't do, which if you don't know the rules and you kind of get caught off guard, let's say your son says, hey, I have an investment opportunity I'd like to do. You invest your 401k with your son. That's not allowed. That would be a disqualified person because he's vertical in your family tree. So there's people that are within your family that you're not allowed to invest in. And if you break those rules, you can blow up your 401k. The IRA is even worse. You could blow up all your IRA money if you invest with the wrong person, be it, your dad, your son, your spouse, if you lend them money. The other thing with self-dealing is if you materially participate in this, so you're self-managing, you buy a single family house and you say, I want to turn this into a rental, you use your 401k dollars, and then you go fix that house up. Or the tenant moves out and you go and clean the house, rake the leaves, change out some plumbing. That's illegal by the 401k rules. So you're crossing lines that could really blow up your retirement if you do that. The benefit of the fund, is that we have a GP LP structure. So we have a general partners, would be me, you, and Keith. We sign on the loans. Oh, that's the other thing. Just you can't sign on loans on behalf of your 401k. So you can't say, hey, I got $20,000. I want to buy a $100,000 house, or $200,000. I want to buy $1 million house. You can't personally guarantee that loan on behalf of your 401k. That would also not be allowed. So with that general partner, limited partners, setup of a typical fund, which, is what we have, we are the general partners. We're the only ones signing on loans. We're the only ones guaranteeing anything to the bank. The LP side is not materially participating, so they can never cross that line. There's no way for them to accidentally show up at one of our apartments and fix plumbing and blow up their 401k. There's no way for them to accidentally sign on a loan that says, hey, you personally guarantee this, because they're a limited partner. They're not responsible for any of that. So they can never make a mistake in that way. So I guess that would be another one of the cons, is that if you take total freedom and you don't understand the rules and you just do whatever you want, you go buy a house or buy an apartment and you start doing some work, or you cut the grass there, you're starting to cross the lines of what you're legally allowed to do, because you're not really allowed to put sweat equity of any sort into your
Yep.
investment. You're not allowed to grow your 401k via sweat equity.
That was a good point. That's
So,
that's where I was going. I wanted your real estate expertise to come out there because I could say enough to be dangerous, but
yeah,
that's really
which is
the point
perfect
I was.
because I get excited about this, so I see like all the benefits, and because I know these rules so well, I forget about what you're not allowed to do, because I just don't do it, because I just know that I'm not allowed to. Like it's not new for me, so I never, it just kind of flies over my head. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that is key. If somebody's took their 401k, went and bought a house and started fixing it up, they'd be like, I listened to that podcast and he said I could. Like, no, we didn't we didn't say that.
Yeah. Yep. I'm always thinking about our listeners, Mike, and what
Yeah.
thoughts are going through their mind. Is some of the things that we've talked about today are brand new for them. And that could be somebody that's, mid 30s like us. It could be somebody that's in their early 60s. It's like, I've been on this earth for 60 years and I didn't know anything about this. And so
Yeah.
I had a feeling we were opening some doors. I just wanted to make sure before somebody tries to step through that door, they know what's going on. And obviously they can reach out to us, go to grandvision.co, contact us. We can certainly answer any questions that come about. For people who are just interested in learning more about this, they might have some of those floating 401ks from past employers sitting out there. They're now 1099, contracting through a healthcare company, and they just want to know, hey, do I have an opportunity to potentially get this into a solo 401k or a self-directed IRA? Go to the second opinion page on grandvision.co, schedule some time with me. My calendar's on there, and we can talk through that just to see if that is an opportunity for you. Because I think that's the biggest takeaway I wanted to get from today's show, is just there is opportunity out there, much greater than what you might think there is. When the topic of the show is 401ks and IRAs, there's a ton of opportunity out there, but does it fit within your financial plan? Does it fit your goals? Do you have the dollars to do it? Really what it comes down to. That's just a quick conversation.
Yeah, and that's why I love the second opinion call. So, when I learned about this back in the day, I mean, my mind was blown. I was like, "Are you
Mm-hmm.
kidding me?" Like, and like when you hear this stuff, you're like, "How did I not know this?" Like, that's not fair. Why did nobody teach me this? Like I missed all this time. So, like, there's always that frustration, and the other thing I always say too is, whether it be taxes or whether it be 401k investing, is like the answer. And my point being, why I love the second opinion call, is because like the answer is never yes or no. Can I do this? Yes. Can I do that? No. It's like, well, this is what I want to do. How can I do that? Like, all right, well,
Mm-hmm.
let's look at it. So like in that house that I did, where I did the 5,000 to 80,000, it's a perfect example. It's like, okay, I want to buy this house and do this. How can I make this work? And I manage all my own properties. So in that case, it wasn't, can you do this? Yes or no. It was, how can I? So it's like, okay, for this one, I need to actually hire a property manager, because I can't be self-involved in this. I can't be managing it myself. So I need a manager to run this for me. So it's always a matter of, not can I do this? How can I do this? This is what I want to do. How can I? And those second opinion calls are huge, because like, here's what I got. Here's what I want to do. How
Mm-hmm.
can I do it? Not, like typically
Great
most
point.
people understand is like, am I allowed to do that? No. Okay, I just go on about my day then. It's like, well, you are not allowed to do it in that way, but there may be another way to do it. Let's take a look at everything and put all the pieces of the puzzle together to see, how do we make this work.
Yep. It's not as complex, I think, as people think it is. They hear solo
No.
or self-directed, and they're like, self-directed. I don't know stocks. I can't go out and do that. Like, oh, it'd be great to invest in real estate, but that sounds super tricky. Like, to manage funds on my own and use those funds then to buy a property that I had, then it's like, it can be very much simplified. And we can certainly talk through that with them.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same for doctors, right? Like when my accident happened and my hand was ripped off, a doctor came in and put it all back together. Like to me, it's like, how did you do that? Like where did you learn
Mm-hmm.
how to like reset those bones? And how did you know to put the plate right there and the screws right in that spot? And how did you not hit nerves? How do you even know what a nerve looks like in your arm? And to her, she's like, I don't, it's just what I do. Like, this isn't that crazy. It's pretty
Yeah.
simple. So it's all the same. It's just what you know, and what you've grown up with, what you become accustomed to. What's complicated for one is simple for another, and that's just
Yep.
kind of the way it goes.
Awesome. Great thought to end it on. Any final thoughts before I let you out of here?
No, I mean, I guess my final thought would just be like I said, my mind was blown. I learned about the self-directed and the solo 401k. I guess my final thought would be just don't like, if you this is the first time you're hearing about it, don't let opportunity pass you by. You know, when I first heard about it, I think there's like 30 people in this room at this conference that all learned about this. I guarantee not all 30 people went and took advantage of this and set this up. I'm sure many people in that room heard about it, their mind was blown, they're like, that's great, and then they never went through and actually made it happen. So I guess that would be kind of my final parting thing is, this really is as good as it sounds. It really is. There's nothing, like, no hidden thing of like, oh, but turns out it's 30 grand to set it up or something. Like, it literally is that great. So the only thing is you just have to go forward and do it, you know? So, I mean, I guess the second opinion call would be a great start. A little Google research on it. Email us some questions if you got some questions. I think it would be awesome to do a follow-up, because I know this is very new for a lot of people. So if we got some questions, we did a follow-up podcast answering those questions would be awesome. But yeah, I mean, really, that's my final thought is like, just because it seems too good to be true doesn't mean that it is. And the only thing stopping you from doing it is just you going forward and actually doing it. So
Yeah, the great philosopher Alex Hormozy says, those who prosper are those who took action. So
there you go.
You bet. All right, good talking to you today. I think a follow-up call would be perfect on this. We could pull out the whiteboard, draw this out for people, but I just know we're going to get some questions. We're going to get some emails, people reaching out to us on this. So I think this will definitely be a topic that we circle back around at a future date.
Sounds good, dude.
All right. See you later, buddy.
All right, we'll see ya.